So Dune Prophecy was boring, hot takes only on this channel. I've praised the IP in a video before, and yet it almost goes without saying at this point that the whole project went through delays, script revisions, reshoots, and the revolving door of major creative turnover that's become synonymous with the concept of development hell. So we're left with a show that's got potential and tons of buzz from the recent films, but not enough sauce to feel like it really lives in the cinematic version of its own world. The plot is best described as that unfortunate combo of being way too convoluted to even begin to explain, while still somehow feeling like hardly anything actually happens. It's not something I'll spend too much time unpacking here, because it makes both the pacing feel bloated with filler and the 6-episode runtime too short to get a real sense of what direction they're hoping to take this concept. It's kind of a mess. And to be honest, I just don't really find any of that very interesting. The whole market-optimized, designed-by-committee approach isn't anything we haven't seen 1,000 times. That stuff is basically the current meta for all the ways most underwhelming high-budget projects are bad, and the show isn't even offensively terrible or anything. There are some great sequences and visuals. The main flaw that feels genuinely unique, and really the only one I want to explore today, is how unwilling the show is to give itself a main character, and all of the ways that makes Prophecy a really strange watch. So let's talk about character writing. Fictional characters exist as a sort of materialized intersection of their personality, circumstance, and motivations. It's obviously much easier said than done, but if and when these three key pieces are adequately established, exactly how a well-written character's behaviors and decisions work within a story become less about imagining those things along the way, and more about creatively fine-tuning the ways they more or less write themselves. A big key in making this work is how different characters play off one another, and this is where the show really struggles. See, I don't think it's fair to say that among the key players in Dune Prophecy, they're all boring characters, as much as the problem is they're all kind of the same character. We've got the two sibling Reverend Mother characters, the Emperor of House Carino, where the show takes place, and this strange soldier type with the power to murder people with his mind. They're each in positions of leadership and privilege, all primarily motivated by desire for power over the Imperium in a relatively abstract sense, and worst by far, they're all absolute black holes of personality. Every single one of these people is stoic, calculated, mysterious, and because they have no one else to play off of in ways that could make that archetype interesting, they're just so boring. These are great actors, but as far as characters go, anyone with an ounce of charisma is relegated to the cringy, out-of-place C-plot that's so irrelevant I genuinely can't remember their names. So what quickly presents our first problem is, even though we're theoretically watching a sci-fi action drama, most of this show is just simple interior dialogue scenes. I'm not saying that can't work really well. I am saying it won't if the character writing makes it feel like you're watching a poker tournament on daytime cable. Everyone's conniving and manipulative and concealing their hand, and that's to the audience as much as anyone. As for who will come out on top, and more importantly, what that would even mean if and when they do, we don't really know, so we don't really care. Frankly, it doesn't seem like there are any good options. That's the point I haven't really touched on yet. Every character is morally gray at best. Not like in a mysterious way where you aren't sure what they're hiding or where their loyalties lie between a clear right and wrong. It's just pretty open that everyone here is unambiguously a bad person. It's not like that can't work. It works in comedies pretty well, but here we aren't attached to or invested in anyone in particular who might make us feel like this is their story. So we don't have anyone to root for. All of them have killed innocent people, all of them seemingly reject altruism for one ill-defined greater good or another. A text stinger in the show's own trailer reads, "True power begins with control." Sure, there's something to that idea thematically, but it's never explored in an entertaining way, and instead just means that these characters lack any of the intrigue or charm you often see with protagonists written as a cautionary tale or sympathetic anti-hero. I mean, I don't know what the point would be when the movies are kind of already in the middle of doing that much better than this would, but still. And Valia Harkonnen is this story's protagonist on paper, if only barely. Her screen time doesn't necessarily reflect that title, considering what feels like about half of it is a much younger actor in flashback. But to any extent the show does follow her journey, it's in that late adolescent stage as a sort of black sheep of her unambitious family to becoming radicalized against House Atreides, joining the Bene Gesserit, inventing, for lack of a better word, what would soon become known as the voice. If you're wondering how many times this scene is played out basically in its entirety, by the way, not even counting the recaps at the beginning of episodes, it's like multiple times. She rises up the ranks to become Mother Superior and then just kinda hangs out in the background most of the time. That's not even a bad thing. It's what this type of character is built to do. Show up once or twice to bring the gravitas and then disappear for long enough for that to feel earned. Charlotte Rampling's presence in part 1 nailed it, but I don't think a mini-series specifically about that character would be very good either. I think it'd be a very strange creative choice to try to tell the bulk of the original Star Wars trilogy mostly through flashback from the perspective of Palpatine from Rise of Skywalker, but that's kind of what this show is. The story of a powerful puppet master background character who interesting things used to happen to, but as far as the plot goes now, just has very little to do. And for what? In case it sounds like I'm arguing that every story needs a conventional main character, I just mean that exceptions only work within the proper context. I can't help but to, as usual, draw some comparisons to Lost. I'm old, okay? That 2000s drama also had an ensemble cast, extensively utilized flashback, and dabbled heavily in the paranormal, so you at least get where I'm coming from. Its lead, Jack Shephard, is definitely a soft protagonist. Lost is quintessentially an ensemble show, much more so than Dune Prophecy, even considering the difference in runtime. Every episode features a different perspective, and less than 1 in 5 are Jack's. It's not at all out of the ordinary for him to be mostly or even completely absent from others. He's pretty unlikable at times. I recently rewatched the first 2 seasons because they're the good ones, and the main reason I decided to go ahead and make this video was because of just how much Lost does with its narrative to thematically reject the idea of a main character. The series is, at its core, mostly about discovering the ways these different characters' lives become, and in many cases already were, deeply intertwined. And the diversity really shines here because their identities are so well established. We have a heroin addict from a one-hit wonder band, a former paraplegic, an unlikely convict in custody, a spinal surgeon mourning his father, a widower and his estranged son, a full-time con artist, a class-divided Korean couple with a severe language barrier to the rest of the group, a retired Republican Guard interrogator, a pregnant girl, and plenty more. There are so many different social and plot dynamics going on there just by nature of interesting characters forced into proximity by a plane crash. It doesn't have to be a pure character study, but a good ensemble show will lean into that variety. We also more and more openly hear the mysterious island they're all stranded on being referred to as a character. It starts as a quirk of some of the more spiritually inclined characters, but as you roll with the punches, it's just an accepted part of the language of the show. With every throughline over the seasons, the island isn't just a character, but arguably the main character. Lost is just more interested in exploring the shared humanity between many different compelling characters, and the show is at its best when doing that. Prophecy finds itself in a similar position where its setting, more than any particular individual, serves as the foundation of the series. It's no one's story, it's just the story of what's happening here, now, or there, back then. And that just doesn't work without more variety than we could ever hope to get out of some shallow political figureheads we know almost nothing about the interpersonal lives of. It's especially hard in the training setting for the young truthsayers. This place literally exists to manufacture conformity. There's a militaristic set of rules and expectations placed onto the acolytes that's only further amplified by their esoteric spiritual significance. Individuality as a concept is something the show could reject via the cult-like mantra of sisterhood above all, title of the third and best episode, and nominally the show's main internal philosophy. But young Valley's entire character is rooted in a self-serving deviance away from the early Bene Gesserit's rules and structure.
When our Mother Superior, we can do whatever we want.
She's a rebel, but only until she isn't anymore. And that's when the story starts, here, now, in the present, where she simultaneously represents both deviance from and total submission to the sisterhood. That's not deep or interesting, it's just bad writing. She has no meaningful screen time in the penultimate episode, and season 1 ends with the mutual reveal of Desmond being Tula's son and the origin of his power after present-day Valia appears in a total of just 3 scenes. I found a 2022 essay by Stanford professor Blakely Vermeule that talks about how we use fictional characters to break the world down into a manageable size. That's true of what art has to say about the real world, but it's also really important in storytelling for someone as a surrogate for the audience to hold ownership over not an entire world, but of their place in it. Say what you will about the state of modern entertainment, I certainly have. But television in particular is doing some really interesting things with protagonists right now. Sometimes they die at shocking and unconventional points along the story. Sometimes they're even two characters at once. But they always ground us in their world without clearly establishing one. We instead have a world with no driving perspective. Too many characters and not nearly enough depth to go around, an ensemble format with no diversity in motivation or personality, flimsily held together in a script by pure circumstance. It's a weak narrative with little to say and no one to say it, because it's no one's story.